Only way to start your day.
Indeed, the only way to start your day. It's 8 minutes after 8 o'clock. And we're getting into the second hour of Kenya's biggest conversation this morning. And even as we do, getting into the festive season, you might fly somewhere. But we'll talk to our two guests about that this morning, even as we do. And we're getting into a sustainability conversation this morning. Two guests are joining us this hour. And our two guests for the hour today is Rita Kavashe, who is the chair of the board and MD at Isuzu East Africa, as well as Dr. Caesar Mwangi, who is the executive dean at Strathmore Business School. And good morning to you both. And karibu sana to Kenya's biggest conversation.
Good morning. We are delighted to be here. I'm delighted to be here.
Me too.
And I'm sure Rita the same. Yeah.
We'll be talking about the third Isuzu East Africa Sustainability seminar rather. But before we get into that, just a couple of things I want to share with you guys. Mm-hmm. We're getting into the festive season. People are flying all over the place and making decisions about who you should fly with or where you should fly to. But CT has these guys who he swears by. That if you're going to get onto a plane this season, if you're going to go somewhere, it's these guys that you must go with. CT, who's that?
Well, your reference is to Emirates, but you see, when people want to travel, they have choices. You can walk to your destination if you wish. If you have a bicycle, you can cycle. You can use motorized transportation, either private or public. However, if you are planning to travel somewhere that is far and you need to fly there, then I want you to consider this choice. You see, traveling with Emirates business class doesn't begin with you getting on the plane. It begins before you get on the plane. Mm. They'll offer you limousine service. Oh. Limousine isn't this delightful vehicle that we use to move from place to place on day to day that resemble a matchbox. Not those ones. Mm. A limousine is a luxurious vehicle. Mm. Mm. You board the plane, then now you're introduced to the good times. Mm-hmm. Not only do you have a meal of your choice that is regionally inspired, if you're the sort of person who enjoys a tipple, you have a choice of some of the finest wines and champagne. Mm-hmm. If you're someone who came from a journey and going on another and you're tired and you want to rest, it's not just reclining, you sit and trying to sleep off. You have a stretch bed where you can lie flat and sleep it. Now, you don't need to use your coats to cover yourself. They'll actually offer you beddings to cover yourself. Now, when you wake up and you have this idea of wanting to finish some work, there is Wi-Fi. You're talking about 40,000 feet above sea level, and you can use your Wi-Fi. But if you finish with the work and you want to watch a movie, my friend, you can binge watch. You have over 6,000 channels to choose from.
My. Okay.
You might actually get confused in the process. So my advice is just go with what you're used to. Okay? Now, that's Emirates for you.
Oh, okay.
There you go. So when you make the decision...
that's what, business class or first class?
This is business class. Oh. In fact, the Emirates business class competes favorably and even does better than many first class offerings in many airlines.
Okay.
Yes.
Rita says, because she's been there, done that, bought the t-shirt.
Yeah. And they even offer you pajamas, sleeping pajamas as well.
Are you serious?
Yes.
Whoa.
And you don't leave them, you go with them.
Oh.
Yes.
And for those who love to have a drink, there is a bar where you can go and have a conversation with inside the plane.
But is there a shower?
Look,
that's a bit of a stretch.
It is an excellent question.
Yeah.
It is an excellent
question. Because these are the amenities we need.
Isn't it? But you get off the flight fresh as a flower, isn't it?
Yes,
and that you can
exactly.
you've taken a nap and you can actually get off the plane and get to your business.
Yes, and you can go to the lounge and you can have what Caesar is talking about, a bed, a shower, and you can enjoy the rest of your trip.
What more?
Wi-Fi, lots of it for those who are doing business.
And if you have a connecting flight, there are lounges that you can actually go to enjoy, again, the same services. Oh. Yes.
Who could ask for anything more?
So, Caesar, this thing of going culture.
Yeah, man. Especially with my long legs, it's a problem, man.
With your height, it's a problem.
It's a problem. The best I do is get an exit seat.
All right. Well, I mean, that's great. So at least we know where, if you're flying, you know who you're flying with and what you're doing this season.
Nice.
All right. So welcome to Kenya's biggest conversation, like we say, and we're going to welcome you to the hot seats of the Situation Room with a proverb. CT, this man, also flies around the continent, not on a broom, but and he mines proverbs from different African countries every week. Right? This week we're in Mozambique. And so he's going to give us a proverb, and then he'll tell us how you would interpret what it means to you and how you would interpret it. Is that all right?
That's right.
Okay.
That's right. Great.
It's the People's Republic of Mozambique, not democratic people, the People's Republic of Mozambique. The proverb: by persevering, the egg walks on legs. By persevering, the egg walks on legs.
Well,
By persevering inside there, then it's hatched, and then it starts to walk.
right. I would buy that.
No, you'll have your turn so you can give the
You go
interpretation.
now. The same one.
You're not
He was coming.
you're not going to ride on her
She had
interpretation.
sorted us out.
No, that was too quick a response. Yes, I agree with her. What do you think?
What do you think?
The Mozambicans were
By
trying to tell us?
persevering, the egg walks on legs.
Yes.
By persevering, the egg walks on legs. For lack of a better word. And even if it's difficult and uncomfortable in that egg, right? It's worth the wait. And we should not just be in a rush. Nothing good comes easy. You don't climb a mountain overnight. You never achieve success overnight. You've got to persevere, and eventually something good's going to come out of it.
I love it.
It's going to be home and dry.
Indeed.
Those are excellent interpretations.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Okay. So, I mean, we're talking about sustainability at this point, and that's why both of you are here. But notably, we're talking about the third Isuzu East Africa Sustainability Seminar. So if there's a third, there was a second, and there was a first, and there was need to have the second and the third after that. So maybe we can start with you, Rita, where all of this came from and what is so important about it.
So under the ESG regulations, where Isuzu also wants to play, because we understand the value of environment, social, and then governance, the first webinar we had at Isuzu East Africa is on the whole issue around the environment. Remember that we are in the motor industry, and we emit quite a bit of gas to the environment. Therefore, we started to think about environment, what type of vehicles we need to come up with. You were talking about electrification, better fuel efficient vehicles and all that. So that is on the product side. But then generally on the environment, how can we create a more sustainable environment? How can we link with our communities to ensure that we are planting trees, that we are collecting water, stormwater collection, we are using better energy like solar and all that. So that was the first seminar that we had, the first webinar. Then the second one was on social. How do we reach out to the community? How do we support our stakeholders, who are our employees, our community, our suppliers? How do we create a more cohesive social environment within our businesses and our communities to be able to have a sustainable business? Employees today, when they come to work, they're not only interested about the job that they do. They want to see how the organization impacts the environment, how the organization impacts the community. They're looking at more sustainable workplace that connects not only with the job that they do or the organization that they work for, but also the community where we all live. So this last one is very topical, and it's the whole concept around governance. And here we are partnering with the Strathmore to really elevate this conversation, because it's very, very topical even in our in our country. It's not only about the organizations, but also generally society. How can we create a more sustainable a society leveraging the whole concept of governance.
Indeed. So we're looking at a situation whereby previously organizations, manufacturers of cars, you manufacture a car, you put it on the road, that's it. But now we've moved into a time whereby we're saying you have the responsibility of making sure that all of this is done in a sustainable manner within an environment within which you exist.
Yes.
Correct?
Yes.
So, Dr. Mangi,
Yes.
where does now your input come in all of this?
Right. First of all, I just want to say that we are very delighted by organizations such as Isuzu for the work that they're doing. I mean, this is a great organization, great leadership Rita is providing there, and I'm very proud to say that Rita is one of our very great alumni from Strathmore Business School. And these are the kind of leaders we aspire to produce for the country, for the continent, for the world. Okay? People who can think long term and who can do things well. It is also very close to our heart, simply because the founding principle of Strathmore University and Strathmore Business School is based on a service to society to make society better. But very specifically, the business school has a vision that states we want to spearhead Africa's transformation. And how do we do that? It's stated in the mission, which states we will do that by developing ethical transformational leaders like Rita and others.
Yeah.
Right? And when you hear an organization talking about governance, ESG, long-term sustainability, and all that, these are people who are not thinking of the present generation. They're thinking of the next generation. They're thinking about building something good for the next generation and the long-term view. And this long-term view is critical, especially for this African continent, to develop, because we have been shortchanged by the predominance of a short-term view. Okay? Most of the things that are done, unfortunately, in our continent are based on short-term thinking.
Right.
And that is not sustainable. Just as this, we talked about this egg, which needs to get legs. I mean, it's not going to hatch in the second day or in the first 30 minutes of the egg being produced, right? It's going to take a growing season or the time that is expected for it to reach fruition.
Right.
And that is now the long-term thinking, and that long-term thinking is for the good of everybody. So the partnership between Isuzu and Strathmore Business School is what we call a match made in heaven. We are totally aligned in terms of values, totally aligned. And we're excited to deal with people like this because it gives us the energy. Yes, we're doing something good, but our alumni and the organizations they work for are actually furthering the cause
of
that
doing this.
we are in this country for.
For purposes of clarity, when we talk about ESG, obviously we're talking about environment, social and governance rather.
Yeah.
And when we talk about sustainability, when you hear that, you think just the environment. But when we talk about organizations, when we talk about private entities, when we talk about government entities that have a role in the whole ecosystem of governance, doing the right thing, for lack of a better word, then it gives us that for that, jump to now say, okay, guys, perhaps this is the way it ought to be. But on the first jump, Rita, when you talk about a motor vehicle organization, the farthest thing from your mind is, okay, where does governance come in? Where does accountability come in? Where does, justice come in? You're thinking, put the car on the road, let's get this thing moving, let's make sure that we are, quality assurance and go. Talk to us about the importance of some of these issues that we speak of, responsibility, accountability, and how it feeds into a long-term running, of a nation as a whole.
It's very critical. Putting a car on the road is not just putting a car on the road.
Yes.
You can imagine the process of just even engineering a vehicle. Remember, a vehicle carries people. So there are very serious risk embedded in the process of curating or making a vehicle, designing a vehicle and all that. So it's fundamentally important that an organization starts right at creating a culture that then enables delivery of a product. Remember, we all come from society, we come from different places. So we come with our own perception, our own biases, our own views. So an organization to be able to succeed or to be there in the long term, first it must be anchored on a very intense program of good values. And it starts from the setup of the organization, the type of leadership that is put in place to run that organization, then bringing in the people that subscribe to that value of that organization. That is the foundation, because then decisions, whether to produce, whether to hire, whether to buy, are all anchored behind that values. And that is what creates a good institution. And that's where responsibility comes in. Responsibility in the sense that when the culture is the drive, is the Bible of the organization, then all decisions that are made in that organization, from the smallest employee all the way to the top employee, are anchored under those values. So you cannot overemphasize. That is where it starts and that is where it ends. So as a leader, I am able to trust my employees to deliver in each and every aspect of their responsibility. And me as a leader, then I'm the custodian of those values, because it is my responsibility to make sure they remain live. They remain live. And then I hold my employees to account. And I am also accountable, and that is good governance. That is the only way you can run a sustainable business. Yeah.
You're both chairman and CEO.
Yes.
A dual role.
Yes.
Each of those roles is demanding.
Yes.
Okay. Now, walk us through this, please. How then do you impart good governance in the roles, let us say, on a day-to-day basis, so that you actually are seen as the leader whom you are, and you also set the example that is required when one is referencing good governance?
Okay, so the role of and it's very interesting. It's a very interesting topic, because experts on governance like Caesar here will tell you have to separate those roles so that you can have better accountability for the same, which is true. So the whole sphere of governance has gone through some transformation, and there are people who say you must separate the roles, and there are some people say you can actually do both. So I am actually doing both. I am the chair of the board, meaning I provide oversight responsibility. So I wear two hats. I oversight responsibility for the organization, and I am also the implementer of that delegated authority that I have received from the board, which I chair. But above me, there is also accountability to my HQ, for instance, in Tokyo. But let's go back to the whole issue around the importance of culture and values, because that is where you get your direction. That is the script that guides your process of decision making. So let's say an example of the board makes a decision that we are going to implement a certain program. My responsibility is to implement that investment. So let's say we are buying land to build a new parts distribution center. When I am implementing that project, I am implementing it not only as a CEO whose responsibility is to implement the works, but I'm also wearing the hat of the chair of the board, where I'm looking at oversight. I am looking at resources, how these resources are being utilized. I am looking at the risk of this program. Are we going to be able to pull through with the budget that is there and all that? So I am doing both. So when actually my board comes, because board comes every quarter, they will find that I didn't only deliver on my mandate of implementation, but during that implementation, I put in oversight role of the board, because I know what the board is looking for, and I am implementing what the board is directing me to do. So those two can be well done together, but the foundation must be the right frame of ethical behavior, the right frame of the right culture and practice when it comes to decision making for the organization.
Dr. Mwangi, I mean, I'm looking at all of these things and I'm hearing them, and to be able to see why it is important that if we have units, I'm just looking at it from a nation point of view, a national point of view, and taking the nation into consideration.
Yes.
Why is it important that these attributes are practiced?
Yeah.
Why?
It is so important. And, I often hear people say that climate change is our existential threat. I can tell you for free that lack of ethics and lack of values is our greatest existential threat, in my view. Understand? And I'll tell you why. If you look at the entire African continent as we speak today, 54 countries, what is the GDP of this entire African continent? It is $2.5 trillion US. You can Google it. It's there. Approximately 2.5 trillion US dollars. All right? This is a continent that is perhaps one of the wealthiest continent in the world.
Yes.
In terms of mineral wealth and everything, land mass 30 million square kilometers, 1.5 billion people. It is, with average age of 19 years, human resource like no other place. This is possibly the richest continent in reality, but it's the poorest. And the failure has actually been lack of governance, lack of ethics, and lack of values. That is the threat. As we speak today, majority of our young people have no hope of getting any work, and yet there's so many. Now, we keep talking about a ticking time bomb. As we speak in this beautiful studio of yours, our young people are trying to cross over to Libya and cross over into Spain, across the Mediterranean Ocean. Half of them are going to die. We are trying to ship them to the Middle East to tell them to get work there, some form of work which is
Something
which is not very impressive. None of us would like our children to do that kind of work. But we're trying to create these kind of things for them. They are getting depressed. And this whole issue of mental problems is because of lack of hope. So when we think of the next generation, it is imperative that we make a change in this regard. And what Rita has said, we cannot make a change. We cannot build anything without values. You look at the benchmark nations that we compare ourselves to. Malaysia, for example. Malaysia was an agricultural country for many years. Rubber and those kind of products that they used to produce, and palm oil. As we speak today, Malaysia is an industrialized country, right? Very similar to Kenya in terms of agricultural productivity, but now it's got a service-based economy. It's doing well. It's thriving. The GDP of Malaysia is 5 times the GDP of Kenya, with barely 60% of the population, because I think Malaysia's population is about 34 million, but they have a GDP of $500 billion US. Kenya's GDP is $110 billion US, right? So we can quickly see that what built them, and if you look at Malaysia's history, was the whole issue of values, hard work, focus, honor, and they're doing well. Rita works for a company that is owned by the Japanese, and we've had this discussion with her in the past, the recent past. I said Africa's GDP is 2.5 trillion US dollars. Do you notice Japan's GDP?
Let's go.
It is 5 trillion.
5 trillion.
US dollars, double the entire African continent. Japan is barely 60-70% the size of Kenya. I think 130 million people. Very, very few people compared to the entire Africa. Which mineral resources? Very limited. Now, here is where it is so evident. Wealth is not created by what is under the ground. It is created by the values we uphold and live by. You know? And that is the governance she's talking about. That is the leadership she's talking about. In fact, Rita's case of being chairman and chief executive is so unique. It's a case study that needs to be done. But I can conclude without too much research. The reason that has taken place is because of trust. The reason these roles are separated is because there's a question of trust. But I think in companies such as Isuzu and the Japanese way of doing things, and the way they're able to trust people and do things with values, and in the process create wealth, there's a great deal of trust. So you don't have to go through all these complications of separating rules and all that, because they trust Rita. And Rita lives by those values as a leader. And that is why it is so important. If we had more trust in this continent, we would have a growing continent.
Indeed.
Yeah.
So I think we'll take a break at that point, but we'll come back and look at then how do you teach it? How do you imbibe it? How do you spread it? And now maybe we're looking at then now this seminar and what you've been able to do in the past, because obviously, like you said, it is a case study. How do you then say, let us now move this on? Future generations, current practice, how do you then move the needle? And let's start getting to where we ought to get. We'll continue with that conversation right after this break. We are having a talk today with Rita Kaveshe, who is the chair of the board and managing director at Isuzu East Africa, as well as Dr. Caesar Mwangi, who's executive dean of Strathmore Business School. How about we take a break with Del Monte? CT tells me, well, actually, I've also been able to taste that, Del Monte is the thing when we come to taking a break with juices. CT, no? Yes?
It's actually real. Why I say it's real is simply this. What liquid forms of food that are often referred to as juices are not always made from fruits. There are some that are just chemical concoctions. And when there's fruit, they are additives. They are given a little sugar here, a little this, that. Now, Del Monte pride themselves in having none of these. It is like that fruit was ripened, and then that food was processed, and then it was packaged for you. When you have a sweetener, the sweetener is not a chemical concoction. It is pineapple juice that is added to give it that sweetener. So it is real. There's no ifs and buts. So if you want to enjoy a real drink, why don't you tell yourself, let real recognize another real.
Straight from nature.
There you go.
Yes.
And also some stuff that's beneficial for your health as well. I hear, and the guys are real for real, that tomato juice is actually great for prostate. Prostate health, fantastic with tomato juice. And Del Monte has that premium tomato juice as well. You want to have a drink, pour it in a glass, sit back and enjoy while you tune into the great programming that is on Showmax this festive season. You can actually take your entertainment with you when you're getting on a plane, Rita, when you're getting on the next trip, Dr. Wangi. When you're doing that, remember, showmax.com offers you great entertainment from local productions to series to movie spots. You're nodding, so I know you know we're on the same page here. For as little as 300 shillings a month, you can take your entertainment with you literally this festive season. Shika Showmax.
From December 4th to 6th, 2024 at
Done right. 94.4 Spice FM, Nairobi.
Our conversations continue, and we're coming around about to 22 minutes to the top of the hour. We are having, initially when we started talking about this, there's always a sustainability conversation. But as I hear both of you, Rita and Dr. Mwangi, as I hear you speak, that it is more than that. It really is the thing that we should all be driving or striving towards. That organizations today in their practice can say on the issues of transparency, on the issues of accountability and responsibility, you can actually show what should happen for a nation then, and those are the answers. So how do you share experiences? Rita, how do you say this is what we have done that should continue and that would actually move towards sustainability?
Great. So I think as a nation, we also have our values, which you can relate to an organizational values. As I said at the beginning, the values of an organization is what sets the platform for better decision making. Decisions are made in organization. Decisions are made at government level. For instance, when you are hiring people to deliver results for an organization, you look at fit, you look at skill, you look at competence. So you bring in people, you look at diversity, you bring in people that have an array of skills. Then you take them through the values, the Bible, the culture that you subscribe to. In the case of our country, we have a constitution, and in our constitution, we have several tools, several chapters that talk about leadership, that talk about governance. It's the same thing with the organization. So from an organizational point of view, then you bring the right skill. You take them through your process. This is how we make decisions. We make decisions in an ethical manner. We win in the marketplace with integrity. We are accountable for what we do because we have been put in this position, whether you are a leader or a mechanic in the shop floor. You are responsible for the role that you have been given. And there are metrics that you have to deliver on, and you are accountable for your action. If you fail to behave and to perform as per the role, then it's very unfortunate that we might have a conversation. So it is exactly the same in any other place of work, whether it's in a farm, whether it's in government, or whether it's in a corporate.
It can be anywhere.
It can be anywhere. That is the bare minimum that is expected. And leadership plays a very, very significant role. People who have been put in position of power and responsibility, like myself, I have to be first responsible myself. I have to set the tone, and I have to create the infrastructure and the tools that then employees can be able to work. And I have to keep on checking whether they are performing as per the tools. How live are these tools? How am I communicating? How am I confirming to them that actually they are living our values and our culture in the way they do their work? So going back to reinforce, but I set the tone. They look up to me. If I am not able to live in an ethical, in an accountable way, in a sustainable manner as I execute my responsibility, I can then not be able to blame my employees because they get the cue from me.
So the tone is set at the top.
Yes, the tone is set at the top because you're the custodian. You have got the oversight responsibility. You are the custodian of the culture, the values, the how this organization is supposed to run. So you are actually responsible. Then if you live those values, if you are accountable, if you are responsible to your employees, to your suppliers, to your colleagues, to the community, to the banker who finances your products, they can trust you. Then that is the way you win. That's the way you build a sustainable business, because customers come to you. Why? Because they trust when they bring their vehicle there for service, it's going to be serviced properly. It's going to be fitted with the right spare parts. Correct. It's going to be built the right way. If I have a supplier who is supplying materials to my production plant, he knows when he supplies me with material XY of the quality that I want at the time that I want, he's expecting, if I say I will pay you in 30 days, truthfully in 30 days, they must receive their money. So if you are running in that ecosystem where people are trusting you, employees are trusting you, the community is trusting you, you can only succeed. But the major responsibility lies on your leadership because you set the tone, you put in the policies and the instrument that other people below you can be able to work.
If I look at the details about the company that you head, one of the strengths that I have observed is in the unique diversity of the ownership. It therefore means that this is an organization that understands partnerships,
Yes.
and it understands how to bring the best together. I mean, most people don't even know that Toyota Motor Company owns shares. Most people don't know that Mitsubishi owns and other companies. Where am I going with this? When you look at the name of Isuzu and you relate it to Kenya, it is a very well-known brand. It is a very well-respected brand. But from everything you told us, it means that it is where it is because of the governance culture that it has. Now, in an environment like ours, where the dominant governance culture are at times at great variance with the very cultures that we are referring to here, how does Isuzu survive?
Isuzu survives because we have decided to survive. Because the responsibility is on us. You know, the responsibility is not on somebody else. The responsibility, the action, the decision to operate in a certain way lies on the individual. You might be surrounded by environment that challenges and tests that resilience. Talk about the egg that survives inside, and then when it pops up, it's a good thing. You have to build the resilience and to reinforce through communication that yes, we live in sometimes in an environment that is very challenging, but this is what we believe in. This is what we stand for. This is what is going to support our organization to be able to grow. It is not a good thing because every day there is temptation. Every day coming you from customers, from everybody. Can you put for me this filter, not this one? Can you? There is all that challenge. But because you subscribe to this value and we reinforce it, communication is key, because leadership communication, keeping that culture alive, is very key. But if the entire environment is cold, like what this country Caesar was talking about, it makes it easier for everybody. But it is challenging, and sometimes you find pockets of bad behavior that's coming into the organization, and you deal with them in a very tough manner, so that you deter future occurrence of such behavior.
Okay. So there's a seminar that's coming up. Why have a seminar, and what will be involved here?
So the seminar that is there is to have this conversation going. Remember, our interest is to share our lessons and to leverage academia, where now Caesar is coming from, because those are topics that they are dealing with, and we are building the future pipeline of employees. When I bring in employees, like graduate trainees to my organization, to train them and have them fit for jobs, going through this process of culture, governance, values is very important. It takes like 3 months of the training. We focus there because we think, to us, we have been successful because we have anchored our business on our values and on our culture. We think if we share that, especially to young people, young leaders who are going through the school, then we'll be able to have this conversation live. So it's about, again, sharing. Sustainability is not only looking at internal, is stepping out to the community and have this conversation and leveraging academia, because they've got several theoretical backgrounds and inputs on the subject, and have a robust engagement between the school and then the community and organizations that have been in that space and have thrived. So it is possible to actually thrive and build a good governance instrument and culture and still be very, very successful in the marketplace.
So, is it, Doc, to see that there are those who will be coming into the market in the future, that those are the folks we're trying to catch?
Yes.
How?
Yeah. Now, there are those who will come into the market. They are currently in the academic studies. There are those who are already in the market, because a business school deals with both. Okay, undergraduate programs are for those students who are quite young. There are postgraduate students who are already working, and there are executives who also come to the business school. Now, I want to just emphasize one of the things that Rita has said. What Rita talked about, we need to build trust. And their organization is a role model for many. By having a seminar such as this and bringing others to see that indeed it is possible. You asked, this is a difficult environment. But to see that it is possible to actually live by certain good values, even in a difficult environment, I think people need to believe that it is possible. Because what Rita is talking about is an ideal we're trying to pursue. We're not just trying to pursue an objective here. An objective is time-bound, right? And it has very specific goals which are achievable. An ideal is something we have to strive for, we have to pursue, we have to live for it, and if necessary, die for it. Suffer for it. Be called names for it. And that is what happens in environments such as this. But we've got to show people that it is possible, even if it looks difficult. That's number one. Number two, after showing them that it is possible, we can show them the rewards of pursuing good values and good ideals. And what are those rewards? Success. I think Isuzu has 90% of the matatu market in this country. That is success. The commercial sector in this transport sector is dominated by Isuzu. That is success. So it is possible, difficult as it is possible. So that we then have more takers who can then say, if they can do it, we can do it. And we are all better off. We'll be able to create more jobs for our young people. We'll be able to improve our economy. We'll be able to improve our GDP. And the society will be better. And that is perhaps what is so important, that we have this partnership, because we're able to bring all those people together and bring the great role model, doing very practical work out there, and show people, guys, we can make a change in this country. There is no reason why Kenya should not be a first world country, my dear friends. There is no reason.
Why?
We have lesser brains.
You and I in agreement there.
Yeah, there is no reason. But it seems we've given up and we've accepted that we are third world, dark continent people, people who can't do stuff.
So what stops us? And I think that's the question that we talk about when we talk about sustainability. You start from point A, you go to point B. And if it's an idea in your head, like Rita has talked about, what stops us from getting from here to there? Why? Why can we have some organizations who get it right, but then we have a problem moving forward? What stops us?
What is stopping us is individuals who have been given very important roles of leadership, but have chosen to pursue very narrow interests, for lack of a better word. And they are not able to see the big picture and the possibilities that they have as leaders who are in the spotlight with great possibilities. You know, leadership is an opportunity to make a great difference, my dear friends. And because we live in a society where, for lack of a better word, we call it a pyramid society, there is a very small proportion of people who end up as CEOs or senior executives in this country. Very small. If we're 55 million people, we have very few who end up in that top position. Very, very few. Now the question is, if you end up in that position, what are you gonna do with that opportunity? Are you gonna squander it on yourself and your self-aggrandizement and your little narrow interests? Or you're gonna do it to the best of your ability with a great value base, a great role model of leadership, which is considering the long term, which is considering others and the positive difference you can make, because that is where your legacy will lie. And if we have more and more people choosing that option, which sometimes is called the difficult option, it is a more fulfilling option, it's a more impactful option, and these are the people who create legacies.
What you're right about, Caesar, is in the absence of examples that one can look at, in the absence of role models that you can actually point to, yes, that reality becomes more of a pipe dream, but it shouldn't be. Because there are people who uphold values, there are people, in fact,
Many.
you know, every time we talk about a value system and what people want,
Yeah.
I have to go back to the year 2000
Right.
and two,
Yeah.
because we were referred to as the most hopeful or the most optimistic
Country in the
nation in the world. Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Now, we saw what happened then, and what stuck in my mind is that people were waiting for a leader who would lead and who they believed intended to actually have good governance as the foundation on which they went their business, and they joined.
Yes. Yes.
And one of the events that took place then that is still fantastic is the matatu industry, who everybody had assumed had gone rogue and would stay rogue.
Yeah.
It is the public that gives them business who said, we will not board your vehicle.
Yeah.
We would rather walk.
Yes.
Now, so it means that even now, people really do want
Yes.
to live lives that are governed by certain ethical values.
Absolutely.
Yes, they do.
They do. They do.
Yes.
People do. Deep in everybody's heart is a desire to live a life of dignity. You cannot live a life of dignity with negative, corrupt values.
No, you can't.
Because they don't befit our human dignity.
Actually, it eats you up. You may think it doesn't, but it actually does.
It eats you.
Yes.
Yeah. So the real wealth is in our values. I think that's the main thing we need to realize. It's not in the outer manifestation of wealth.
You know, I was looking at the Japanese auto industry, and when it started around 1912, 19 to 1926, the period when it was starting. And if you look at the vehicles that were produced by private industry, my goodness, Some of them were disastrous.
Yes.
Overheating, God knows doing what. But who could have foreseen? Let's forget the 1920s. Let's get to the 1930s, 40s, 50s, 60s. Who could have foreseen that particular industry from that country of Japan would be probably the most dominant industry on the planet?
Correct.
Who could have foreseen it?
Yeah.
It was, if you said that at that time, that they would be the most dominant thought, you'd have been told you're mad.
You would have
Yes.
been told you're
It's
crazy.
not possible.
Absolutely.
You're crazy.
Yes.
Sorry, and what they pursued is exactly what we are saying. Continuous improvement.
Yes.
Yes.
Persistently.
Yeah.
They
Yes.
wanted to build a sustainable auto industry, and they were relentless in pursuing excellence. So they were there in 1912, continuously building on that know-how, improving their technology, improving their quality step by step to the point that they became global leaders in the auto industry.
Persistently pursuing excellence.
Yes.
I mean,
It did.
yeah.
But also, there's something else about the value that they espouse
Yes.
as a people.
Yes.
You see, one of the things that you will notice when you come across a citizen of that particular country who is in the public service, the joy they derive from serving their country. It is actually amazing to observe. There's nothing that gives them pleasure than doing what is right and even going above and beyond, so long as it is for the good of the country.
Absolutely.
Now, when you take that value onto anything you do, you tell me, why can
What
you not
can't
succeed?
you do?
Yeah.
You are right.
What kind of-
Here we are busy having a conversation around culture, values, leadership, like they are topical issues that needs to be discussed.
Yeah.
In that society,
They're lived.
they are lived.
Yeah.
It's not discussed.
From the time a child is born, that is the expectation. They start to be trained step by step. This is how you behave. This is the level of responsibilities expected of you in this society. We have to trust you. You have to speak the truth and all that. So when this individual is coming to the workplace, they're already fit. They already subscribe to those values. So you can make major progress in terms of development when that becomes a way of life and not something that you are being pushed to comply with.
Indeed.
The foundation.
When does seminar take place, Rita?
The seminar is on 10th of December.
10th of December.
10th of December.
All right.
Yeah.
And
so
I think the world is, you've just said Kenya, looking forward to opportunities whereby these things can be imbibed, whereby you're now taking, a whole group of people and putting them into a society whereby even if you didn't grow with it, you can get something
yes.
that will help you change the nation
Yeah.
day by day. So, I mean, it will be interesting to watch what comes out of it. And like you said, persistence.
Yeah.
This is the third one. Persistence in having or chasing excellence is one thing to go after. Thank you so much for being here this morning. Rita Kavashe is the chair of the board and MD at Isuzu East Africa, and Dr. Caesar Mwangi is the executive dean at Strathmore Business School. Thank you for being here this morning. And as taking a break with Del Monte, you have something to go away with and taste that. Let us know
thank you. Very
what you
nice.
think of that. Some slices for you and some Del Monte goodness. Definitely real is real. No additives, no sugar. It's all natural. Enjoy that as you do.
Thank you very much.
The conversations continue as we go towards the top of the hour. And as we've had a sustainability and responsibility and accountability question, it'll be interesting because in the next hour we talk about really what is Kenya doing and how far has it gone in the fight against corruption. Good morning, everybody. It is getting round to 9 a.m. Time for the news.